Do I need this? All right, the city of Plattsburgh is holding a public hearing to hear public comment on proposed local law P4, a local law amending chapter 360 zoning of the city code of the city of Plattsburgh by amending and restating section 360-26A, quote, off-street parking requirements in its entirety, as well as amending any other code references thereto. I will now I'll take a motion to open public comment. Motion by Councilor Gay, second by Councilor Canales. Public comment is open. And any persons intending to make a public comment at this hearing can do so now. Please.
Good evening. I assume you all know who I am. I'm Ron Allen. I'm chairman of the zoning board for the city of Plattsburgh. Last time I saw you, we were talking about another P4, which got ultimately passed that I didn't like, and that many people didn't, but that's it. Now we have a new P4. And I've got a lot of comments, and I'm going to say this as nicely and as calmly as I can. But I understand the law was proposed by Councilman McFarland, and I will tell you first and foremost that I assume that your intentions for the city of Plattsburgh are honest and sincere, and you do what you think is right for the city. However, where does this law come from? It comes from a counselor who frankly is going to be leaving soon and will not feel or know the effects of this law, but maybe it's right. If it was right, that would be a great parting gift to the city. I don't particularly feel it's right. And I read the paper today and I decided, folks, and this is in no way meant to be an attack of you. I'm just talking about our differences of what we see as having happened. Number one, it said that you couldn't think of any cases except Prime specifically, and that Prime struggled with parking. In fact, during the long period of time we dealt with Prime proposed and we accepted their calculations for parking based on what they said that they needed, far below the minimums, some 80 or 100 spaces that the city would have required. Now, that wasn't under the jurisdiction of the zoning board, that was the planning board, but ultimately, they did not struggle with parking and got what they wanted. They said, this is based on the hamlet, this is what we need, and they were granted that. There's also a comment that you had heard, and I'm not sure what you heard about, projects that were killed by the lack of one space, and maybe somebody told you that. I've been on the zoning board 22 years, and as I reminded you before, which is probably longer than all of you combined serving the city. At no point do I know of any project that was killed because there was a lack of one parking space. Our process, which sometimes takes time, often involves negotiations back and forth between owners and developers and the boards to make sure that what they're doing is not over densifying a parcel, is not hurting quality of life. Never do I know of a project that was killed because of lack of one parking space. I'm just going to tell you, maybe people told you that. And I've been doing this 22 years. So, here's a question for you specifically, and then I'll get into some stuff. Why were the boards that deal with parking not even consulted on this? I found out on this 4 or 5 days ago, somebody, Scott Devane, wrote me an email and said, hey, did you see this thing? You're going to get rid of parking minimums. There was not a single word to any board. Nobody said to us, what do you think about getting rid of parking minimums? What do you think about changing this? What do you think about changing that? Nobody said a word to us about a form of appointment. Here's this law that all of a sudden, in the middle of June, without any much, I think it was in the paper today, finally, that there was a public hearing, without any fanfare was put in, and if there wasn't a public, nobody had known, you guys could have just passed it, off we would have gone. It's not just the boards, and I am protective of the zoning board and the planning board both. for an independent board, we're supposed to be not affected by public politics, we're not supposed to be affected by other people, we're supposed to be independent and have that power to show our independence and do what we think is right for the community. And we take it very seriously, very, very seriously. So now we want to in any way asked about this, nor were any of the departments. I don't believe public planning, building inspector, I don't know about public works. I don't know how much they were notified. But I can tell you certainly that we weren't even, I didn't even know it was a consideration that you would do this. And the other thing is that we have right now, I'm on another committee, I think you're on it, that's rewriting the comprehensive plan. That's rewriting the zoning code. What about that? Why are we doing this all of a sudden, slamming this through, when in fact, there's this whole process and committee of many involved community members of all ages, by the way, I want to say, young and old, some with lots of experience, some with lots of new ideas. But there are many of us working on trying to shape the future and change the codes and change this, but this needs to be done in that forum where everybody is represented, not just some counselors that think that this is what's good for us and we'll just do it because we know. And I'm sure that that's the impression we get. You guys don't need to worry about the details. We figured out that it's okay. And again, I'm not personally attacking anybody. I'm just telling you I'm attacking this process. Now, it is my understanding that the planning board at their Monday meeting passed a resolution, which I'm assuming you received, asking the council not to act on this evening, and asking the council to consult with both boards and others involved so that this can be considered, not a big blanket, get rid of all the minimums. And I would tell you that because I didn't know about it at our last meeting, and I just found out after our meeting, their meeting's a week later, I polled the board independently, one at a time, by the way, no open meeting law violations of any kind, and asked them. And the members said, we do not support this law, we do not support this change. It demands further study before we can even understand, but we cannot get rid of all parking rules. That is the entire zoning. So I want to know, we're in the midst of this study, we're doing this, and maybe there's some reasons we want to make some of these changes, but just not this pointed thing. You're going to say, what are some of the potential effects of this change? And I'll start with, we all talk about commercial development, and the developer knows how many spaces he needs for his restaurant or his store. What about the residential uses in the city? And I live on Couch Street, right in the center city. I have college housing all around me, my house. All around us, and it's gotten better and better. But I'm going to tell you, part of the reason is because we've stopped it from happening over and over again, over densifying and controlled it with parking. I have a little small home on Couch Street. I have 4 bedrooms. I have 1 parking place. If this law goes into effect, across the street, they get $3,100 a semester. I can put 4 students in. That's over $24,000 a year that I can rent my house for to 4 students. You think it's going to only happen on Couch Street or Lafayette or over in the Flats or something? Mm-hmm. What about all the houses on Prospect, Olivetti, Leonard? As far as you want to go on the West End, they're all going to be subject to being able to be filled with 4 young adults. I don't like to always say college housing, young adults. You're going to find people are going to say, yeah, Mitzi was going to go and we looked at all the apartments. They weren't that good, but we found a nice house up in North Plattsburgh, nicer neighborhood. It's a little more money. It's $4,000 a semester. But we put it in 3 of our funds. You're going to find that in a market where nobody can buy or afford a home anymore, there's another home comes on the market, snapped up. Investors will swoop in and buy every single family home they can because they can put 4 students in without any regard to parking. So aside from anything else with this blanket removal of minimum parking requirements, if you do this for R1 and even R2 districts, you're going to cause an absolute dissolution in family neighborhoods. All you're going to see is businesses will be built up that will manage these rentals for you. All of us boomers Or our kids are gonna go, I'm gonna move to a condo out somewhere and for $1,000 a month, and I can rent my thing for 2,000 or 3,000. Or our kids go, you know what I'm saying, here. And so, the same thing's gonna happen in the R2 districts. You're gonna find all of these people just rushing in to buy up properties at wherever they can at whatever price, because we saw it before, and that's why we fought so hard in the RH district. They snap them up. Now these properties start to be assessed based on the rental income. Forget about square footage or comp sales. So comp sales will be based on rental. You're gonna start finding that houses can rent for 30,000. In R2, and maybe you get a couple of them, you get 64,000. So I think that that has not been thought through. But I'll tell you, I will concede one thing, and that is that I've always said, for commercial uses, oftentimes the owners and business owners' intentions and business plan might show that they can survive with less than our parking minimum. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be. It means it needs to be considered by a zoning board or a planning board. But I've often said, when Five Guys wanted to go where Carsano's was, we'll give some real history here. They needed 32 spaces, say, and they only had 24 or 28. They said, our business plan will work here. We said, okay, and we gave them that variance. It made sense. They said, we're going to drive with this and that. So I think that there are, for commercial, some commercial uses, and certainly for downtown, if you want to examine parking minimums in downtown or in certain districts, or create overlay districts, that's one thing. But to do a blanket removal of all of these minimums is just, it's too rushed, it's too counterintuitive. I get that Strong Town says this, and the hip thing is to say that, and oh, this is good, cool. And I think there are a lot of younger urban planners that agree with this, and I'm not saying it's wrong. What I'm saying is that we need to cut a little more carefully here, and we need to understand the real ramifications of a blanket statement like this. I'm going to tell you that the voting on and potential passing of this law tonight just should not happen. Should not happen. I would ask you to respect both the fact that the planning board passed a resolution asking me not to, and that my poll, and I can send copies of emails to the mayor or whoever, independent poll of each board member, said the same thing. Please do not consider this until you've understood the ramifications, and do not rush this through, because once this happens, it goes into effect. I know it's got to go to the county, but you probably got the same thing will happen as the P4, the previous P4 law. You need a majority plus one, and then you'll get it, and then the next thing you know, off to the races. Those things, once they happen, can't be taken back. Whatever happens while that law is in effect, can't be taken back. It then becomes fact and probably gets that. So I want you to look at the zoning codes. I want you to understand the parking codes and the parking minimums, but I don't see how you can possibly just do this, and then I said in the paper you're going to vote on it tonight, theoretically. I'm asking you not to do that. I'm asking you to please consider the people that have worked on these independent boards for so long, and that actually understand how these parking minimums have been used, not just to stall crime. Okay, let's get past crime. Nobody liked the zoning board, we took forever, all that stuff, you're all mad at us, trying to get rid of me. Let's go past that. Not just crime, not one thing. This is the future of the city, and if you do this wrong, you will destroy everything these zoning boards have worked on in these planning boards for decades. And that's really good. So I'm just asking you, please respect our boards. Help let the comprehensive plan people work on this. Take it piece by piece, district by district, and understand how you can shape parking. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other persons intending to make comments at this public hearing, please?
Marissa Gilbert, 25 years on both planning and zoning chair for a number of years. I am wholeheartedly with Ron. I don't need to reiterate what he said. One of the most important things he's mentioned, but not really emphasized too much, is the grandfathering that occurs. If you let this happen, you pass it, and then someone instantaneously decides to rent, okay, under the new law of not requiring the parking, and they can prove that they've started to rent without having parking, because you're not requiring it, then you change the law back, guess what? Grandfather, you can't undo what you've just given them. We have lots and lots of properties right now, hugely overoccupied properties in the Center City District where there is not enough parking. People park on the lawns. Again, what you'll see is the quality of life issue of, yes, there's not enough paid parking in the lot, but what they do is then park on the front lawn. How much do you really want your neighbor destroying your neighborhood by parking on the front lawn next door? Okay? It's, I've got to be careful what I say because I know what I'm doing here. Anyway, I'm definitely against this. Please do not vote on this tonight. If you want to selectively, with a scalpel, create overlay districts in certain areas where this kind of lack of parking requirement would be fine, you phase it in. And remember, every change to the zoning code should be based on the master plan. And so where in the master plan do you see this change guided or authorized? I don't see anything in the master plan that suggests having no parking requirement at all would be a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Good evening. My name is Scott Devane. I don't have near the experience that they do on the boards. I've only been on zoning board for about 8 or 9 years. But I have lived in the city of Plattsburgh for 40 years of my life, so I have a pretty good investment in the city. I won't repeat what they've said, but I can only assume that part of this has come from the idea of trying to get people out of cars and into public transit. We do not have an adequate public transit system here, so this is kind of putting the cart before the horse in that end. I say that not ever even using cart. When I do see it around, it's only on very select routes. I have not seen any research on this. Have we looked at other cities like size with university in the center? I looked at a couple online today. They have basically the same requirements as we do, Oneonta and Portland. Portland's just about the exact same size as Plattsburgh, same type of college. They've got the same type of requirements. Is there a city in the state of New York that has no zoning or no requirement for parking? And how is it working? Has anyone researched that? Where's the basis for it? The other thing, the city has received millions of dollars for downtown revitalization, and this sort of idea does not speak well for getting people downtown from outside the area, which is what you really want. People from the outlying areas of the city and outside the city or the county. This doesn't speak well for it. Lastly, I guess I would like to say, I think that this P4 2021 and also P4 2020 seem to be eroding the total function of the zoning and planning boards. And if that's the intent, then go ahead and just disband those boards. You're taking all the power away or all the charter that we have instituted to us to do and control growth in the city. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other persons intending to make comments at this public meeting?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Merkel, please.
My name is Lori Russo, and I live at 21 Morrison Avenue, which is in an R2 residential district. So I've served on the city planning board for a number of years in the past, but I'm going to tell you what it's like to live in a residential district where this is essentially already going on. So my little street is a little narrow street. It does not have enough parking for cars to be parked on either side of the street. We are notorious for this. I don't know if they still do it, but I've lived on this, well, I grew up on the street, but I have been living on the street for 14 years now in my own home. And the fire department at least used to use our street for training purposes because our street is so narrow that when they were training new people to drive their big trucks, they would send them down Morrison Avenue to learn how to safely navigate through the street because our street is narrow. And when you have the modern number of cars that people have, ours is very difficult to navigate. Our street does not get plowed at times in the winter because the plow cannot get down the street if people are not parked off street. Okay, so I happen to live in the most congested spot in the street. There are 2 places that are rentals that happen to be directly across the street from my house. We have a very, if you're not familiar with Morrison, it's a very small, almost like a cul-de-sac kind of experience between Beekman Street and Grace Avenue. It's what we all love about it. We have a tight neighborhood. We all know who lives there. We recognize cars. We recognize people walking down the street. However, I have a rental directly across the street that has enough off-street parking, and they generally use it. And then there's another one, which has, this is what we hear, okay? The house is actually on Cornelia Street. It's the old Bailey farmhouse, so it's that big, beautiful stone house that has a very long driveway that comes off of Cornelia. However, they have a sidewalk that comes out at right angles and deposits itself on the street right across from my house. There are several apartments in that house. The people who live in that apartment, in those apartments, do not park in the spaces that they have off street. They park on our street. The word that we get from them, and they've changed over time, is that the landlord does not allow them to park in there, except in the winter when our snow lights are on. And then they're allowed to park off street. The rest of the time, they park on our street. And our street is so congested that several of us whose driveways back out into this have a great deal of difficulty when everybody's lined up on the side of the street to even get out of our driveway safely. You cannot get a fire truck or an emergency vehicle down that at times because if people aren't very good parkers, they have taken up the whole street. There is currently parking, they're not using it, so I can tell you what it looks like when people in a residential district now have extra density of, I think there's 3 apartments in the house directly across the street, plus a 4th. Mother-in-law apartment that went on to one of my neighbor's houses when they needed a mother-in-law apartment, and then when it changed hands, then it turns into a rental. So please give this consideration. There are a number of neighborhoods like mine which do not have extra space for a parking lane. They were built in whenever, I don't know, 1935 to 1940, when everyone had, if they had a car, had 1 car. You do this to a neighborhood like mine, and nobody's gonna wanna buy it. 4 houses have changed hands in our neighborhood in probably the last 6 months. It's a hot neighborhood at the moment. Everybody wants to live there because we have a great neighborhood. We have a really friendly place to live. It's safe generally for our kids, except for all of these cars, which make it very difficult not only for us to navigate, but for trash trucks, for fire trucks, for ambulances, and snowplows. So it's not all about downtown. It's about a bunch of us who invested our money in being in the city, who pay our taxes, who try to do our best to upkeep the neighborhoods that we have and make it a safe and comfortable place to live. And I really believe if you do this, that there's a good chance that it's, others have said this, it's going to erode what that is like. And there's not then going to be anything we can do about it, and there's nothing that your successors will be able to do about it. That's what it's like to live where there's no parking restrictions. Because nobody enforces them anyway, from our perspective, because this has been going on now for years and years while we live there. Thank you.
Good Lord. Are there any other persons intending to make comments in this public hearing?
David Merkel, Cumberland Avenue.
David, how are you?
I'm surprised to see this on paper today, although I vaguely remember seeing something in the rules about it. Didn't really understand the ramifications. There wasn't a lot of fleshing out in the legal session. Anyway, I'm not sure why this action has to be taken now, especially when there is a comprehensive review and process, and to me that would be the place to handle something like this. I'm just not sure how much to get this through. if you would like to get rid of something in the article today, they mentioned the special assessment district. If you could get rid of that, that would be a positive thing. Anyway, I respectfully request that you table this item or totally defeat it tonight. Let the process of the comprehensive review run its course and let an organized approach prevail. Thank you.
Are there any other persons intending to make comment at this public hearing? Seeing none at this time, I will take a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion.
Councilor Canal, second by Councilor Gibbs. All in favor? This public meeting is now adjourned.
Mayor Rosecliff, may I request a brief 5-minute recess before we begin our main meeting, please?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
You doing all right? You all right?
I just need to take a short break.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll be right.
Yep. Folks, we're gonna take a 5-minute break before we start the regular meeting of the town council. So talk amongst yourselves or hang out, whatever you'd like to do. Check your email. Yeah.
Would never guess.
Taking on responsibility.
I don't know. I just know a lot of soda. And my favorite song's like from here. But I drink more coffee.
Your man tells me. You are. I'm looking at you. Can I see if you look different?
It's a leak.
It's really hard to actually hear.
I mean, they go back to. I've driven it a couple times. Eyes water.
Stop up there. It's gonna be kind of soft with a fan.
They still have it down and down with the stage.
Nothing fancy other than the bird. And folks, at this time, I'd like to call the July 1st, 2021 regular meeting of the Common Council City of Placer to order. It is now 5:32 p.m. Please rise and join me with the pledge. With allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Carlin, will you please conduct a roll call?
Mayor Rosenquist.
Here.
Councilor Canales.
Here.
Councilor Kelly.
Here.
Councilor Gibbs.
Here.
Councilor Talon. Here. Councilor McFarland.
Here.
Councilor Moore.
Here.
All councilors have received a copy of the meeting minutes of the June 17, 2020 regular meeting. If there are no additions, deletions, corrections, I will now entertain a motion to accept the meetings as presented. Councilor Canales, second by Councilor Gibbs. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I'll now recognize those in the audience who wish to share their thoughts and concerns with the council on any topic. Please come to the podium to be acknowledged. When called upon, we ask that you please state your legal name and address for the record, and in accordance with the organizational rules of order, all speakers will be given 5 minutes to address the council.
I'm back. Good evening. Different topic. My name is Ron Allen. I live at 47 Couch Street, Placer, New York, 02901. Again, I stand with the zoning board of appeals for the city of Placer. This is a separate issue from the parking, and I'll try to stay under 5 minutes. It's pretty important. The board presently has a vacancy. If you remember, Mayor Reed appointed and you approved two different appointees, first BJ Whitbeck and then Julie Bond. Julie Bond lasted about 4 months and resigned, and that created a vacancy. BJ still with us. So we have 6 board members, and we've pretty well figured out who's regular and who's an alternate, but this is pretty important. The last 2 meetings, because of the one board member had to be absent in each one, different ones, we had 4 members present, when in fact we're a 5-person board. So filling of this vacancy is quite important. The mayor, it is my understanding, because I got emails saying that, asked for an agenda item to be included to appoint Danielle Erb to the zoning board of appeals for the city of Plattsburgh. A little later, I got an email saying that it died in committee, which I didn't understand, frankly. I found out about, and that the appointment wasn't going to happen. Now, I have some questions, and this is a public comment period, so I don't expect you're going to answer me, but what committee? How many councilors on the committee? Which councilors voted not to forward the agenda item to the full council, because my understanding it wasn't a full council committee. And frankly, what was wrong with Danielle Erb? In the 22 years again that I've been on the zoning board, and well before, as far as I know, no appointment of a mayor to an independent board has ever been denied by a common council. Never, not once. The mayor appoints, and as a formality says, please bless this, and the council does. You certainly had no problem with the last 2 appointments, they went right through. So I want to know what was wrong with Danielle Erb that she wasn't able to be forwarded even the agenda item. Was it perhaps public statement she made? Was it, do you think she's a criminal? I mean, it's pretty hard just because somebody has a difference of opinion. So what I'm going to tell you is that I polled, I'm pretty good at this polling now. The zoning board of appeals for the city of Plattsburgh, there are 6 of us, and all 6 of us recommend and request that Danielle Erb, the mayor's chosen appointment, be appointed to the zoning board of appeals for the city of Plattsburgh immediately. He has to put it on an agenda, he has to request that. We're asking that that goes on the full agenda to the full board and that it's voted on. And if you're going to say why she can't be an appointee, I want to know why. She's a highly qualified, well-spoken, intelligent person who understands open meeting law, who is well-versed in a lot of stuff. And she is more than qualified and seems to also have the ability to have some staying power, not quit after a few months, like your last one. So I would like you, I'm going to send a formal request to the mayor tomorrow morning, asking him to place her on the agenda for the council. And I'm hoping that you will approve her because we need her for the July meeting. We do not have a full board. That's item number one. Item number two is that, don't get too excited, but I've decided that I don't want to be chair of the zoning board anymore. I'm going to stay as a regular member, and I've asked the mayor to appoint Scott DeMane as chair of the zoning board, effective for the July meeting. I'm going to also send the results of the independent poll that I did with the zoning board of appeals. All 6 members said that they support Scott as the chair of the zoning board of appeals and the mayor's appointment. I'm going to ask him to place that also on the agenda. I'm not sure if it's the July 8th agenda or what agenda it is, but we need this done because I want Scott to be able to run the July meeting. So that is what my whole thing, and I want it, I just don't find it to be appropriate that a qualified candidate will fight hard to get people on the independent. We don't get paid to do this, right? We don't, this is voluntary. To get somebody to come in and also to take the abuse we took the last 2 years is not easy. And to find somebody intelligent to do that, or if somebody qualified like Scott to be chair, who's been doing this for a while and understands it. And I'll stay around for a little while and I'm gonna help him get in the transition, but these things have to happen and have to happen for the July meeting. So that's where, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to comment on any topic?
Good evening. My name is Joel Vogelsberger, otherwise Hillcrest Avenue in the city of Plattsburgh. I want to discuss an item that was on the agenda and no longer is. We were looking on making the assistant chief's position a part-time position. One of the things I wanted to discuss was, I don't feel this would be an action that can be done. I question that. If you find a way that it can, that's fine. My point is, there's a lot of descriptions and duties that the assistant chief needs to complete. My understanding for this appointment, this was to take care of training issues within the department. That's only one piece of it. The assistant chief is responsible for very many roles. They also have to respond to all calls. This isn't something that needs or can be done in 20 hours a week or less. This role is very vital to the city and should be filled full-time. What the council should be doing is trying to find a way to do that. If they feel there's an issue with training, they can do something along the lines of what Councilor Kelly might remember, contract. We contracted Dan Collins back in 2010, 2011, multiple years. He came up with curriculum. He trained officers how to train the rest of the department. He oversaw some training, worked very well. So if this is a training issue, there's ways to do this, but you should not take away from what the assistant chief's position is. The city code basically dictates what the duties and responsibilities are going to be for the assistant chief. They can't only just do parts of it. You can't just cherry pick it. We're responsible for following the city code to the letter at the risk of discipline, at the risk of anything. So you can't create a position that only covers part of it. I realize it's not on the agenda anymore. I just wanted to come up and make this point because it's important. Just like the position would be important. You should consider fully funding it, not just part-time.
Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to be acknowledged, please?
Good evening, I'm Michael Trudeau, I live at 21 Morrison Avenue here in the city, and I just wanted to express my unapproval of the city wanting to purchase the marina and the restaurant in downtown on the waterfront. I believe that the city is not here to be in business. I believe they're here to help the city improve and to serve us as taxpayers. And while I believe that there are some positive reasons and some good reasons, as I spoke to them about this earlier this week, I came in and voiced my opinion, and I really do appreciate your open ears and constant communication. I don't feel that an appropriate study has been done. I'd like to see the P&L. I know we're projecting $250,000 in profit. I don't see where the operating costs are. And I just think this needs a lot more study, and most people that I have spoken to about this are feeling the same way. We do not belong spending $7.5 million over how many years, mortgaging yet again, more of our grandchild's future and everyone's future on this venture. And I would urge the county council to reconsider that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else who'd like to be recognized to speak on any topic? We'll now go to committee reports. Each standing committee is chaired by a counselor, and I'll call upon the chairperson of each committee, starting with city operations, Councilor McFarland.
No updates at this time, although we will need a new chairperson.
Noted. Finance and economic community development, we had our meeting last month. We have another meeting scheduled for 7/8 next Thursday. There's a number of topics that it's going to be a fairly lengthy meeting. There'll be a number of topics, including updates from CEO, updates from finance. As most of us know, we're halfway through the year at this point. So we're going to go back into budgeting this year at this point. So it'll be a fairly lengthy meeting. Items 7.161 through 7.166 are on tonight's agenda for the recommendations of that committee. City Infrastructure, Councilor Moore.
I didn't have a lot of updates, but I did want to remind everybody to bear with us with all this fading going on. It's pretty choppy going on some of the streets, but that's the only way we can get to the other end of it, especially COVID. And I hope everyone understands that it's going to be a lot better once they're done.
River Street looks great.
It does.
It's fantastic.
They did that like in a week, something like that, pretty quickly.
And the speed bumps that the campus put in,
Smooth.
nice and smooth.
Yeah, they really are.
That's the first time I've heard it. It's really fantastic work.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Public safety, Councilor Gibbs.
So we had our public safety meeting last week. We've got a couple of items for approval on the agenda. We met with the mayor yesterday as part of our weekly Mayor Pro Tem meeting, so we discussed some issues within the fire department. I've been requesting some data, some information regarding staffing, overtime, and strategic planning. Councilor, because we can't meet as a whole group, otherwise we violate the meeting law, Councilor Moore is going to be coming to my house tomorrow, and we're going to continue discussing, and then we'll share that with both the mayor and with Councilor Town as we continue to look into, but we're going to focus very specifically on the fire department. We're looking at a bunch of things, and then, like I said, we'll communicate backwards.
Thank you.
That's all.
We'll now go on to liaison reports. Flagsburg Public Library, Councilor McFarland.
Oh, yes, the library is fully open. They are asking anyone that is not vaccinated to wear a mask. But other than that, they are fully open, so please go visit the library.
Thank you. Flagsburg Municipal Lighting Department, Councilor Kelly.
I'll just remind the MLD board members, who was all of you, that our next meeting is July 29th, so please plan on attending. Well, except for you, Councilman McFarland. We'll miss you greatly.
Mr. Teller, any staff member reports?
No reports and no need for executive from that perspective.
And there are no special committee reports. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the payrolls of various city departments for the weeks ending July 1st, 2021, in the amount of $584,933.85. Motion by Councilor Moore, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion. Roll call.
Council Canales?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Talon? Yes. Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Carried. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the bills audited by the Common Council for the weeks ending July 2nd, 2021 in the amount of $602,782.17. Motion by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion. Roll call.
Council Canales?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Talon? Yes. Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Carried. Before voting on the following resolutions, I'll note that the majority of these resolutions have been thoroughly discussed by the appropriate committees and their department heads. We're now taking action on these items, in large part due to the recommendation of those committees. Ms. Carlin, will you please read the titles of the resolutions to be acted upon?
Item 7.154, authorized budget transfer, general fund, mayor's office, contract services.
Motion by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Canales. Discussion.
Yes, can we get a full explanation of this for the members of the council who weren't able to attend?
As per the agreement, our shared services committee at the county level, it's been noted that the county municipal leaders, supervisors, mayors, and other public safety staff, this has also been discussed with our fire department and the members of our fire department, that we would like to enter into a intermunicipal agreement. It's primarily being led by the city and the town of Plattsburgh, but create an intermunicipal agreement to do a countywide EMS study. The intention of that is to identify some, pretty much a SWOT analysis, but the gaps that we can start to fill, or some concerns in either coverage or costs that a lot of our municipalities may face, as well as the service levels throughout the county. But ultimately, we're looking at the city of Plattsburgh contributing $5,000, town of Plattsburgh contributing $5,000, and then a number of other municipalities throughout the county to help fill the gap for purchasing or hiring a consultant to do this type of study. Fundamentally, it may or may not change how the city of Plattsburgh does business in that realm, but it's much needed, not only in the city, but throughout our region, where there's scary lack of coverage, to be honest. In some places, it's very scary.
It's actually really bad. I can tell you the town of Ellenburg passed their resolution. I think theirs was $500 their share, about a month ago. And I can tell you in those outlying towns, they spend a lot of time talking about EMS service. Lyon Mountain has an EMS service. The town of Clinton actually has a pretty good EMS service, and they're covering a lot of the other towns. And it's something that we don't talk about a lot here because we have the fire department that provides our EMS service. We also have the hospital right in the city. But it is a big thing, and it's a thing they worry about a lot, not having appropriate EMS coverage in the rural areas.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Council Canales?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Talon? Yes. Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Carried.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Whoa.
I'm sorry. I got a little carried away.
Item 7.155, authorizing memorandum of agreement, New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services Office.
Motion by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Canales. Discussion.
Yes, can we get an explanation on this? Can we get an explanation on this?
Yeah, this is the foam trailer that we partner with, as part of the response mechanism from the fire department.
What does the foam trailer do?
Puts out fires,
Of course.
helps put out fires.
How is it different, but I guess,
Well, there's certain types of chemical fires that is required to use foam rather than water. This trailer already is housed at the county, in a county facility for free. And it's our responsibility to respond per the contract and for the use of the trailer itself.
From what I read in the resolution, it says that this would be used primarily for the trains that we affectionately call the oral trains. So if there were a spill, and let's hope that never happens, this piece of equipment would be vital for putting out an oil train fire. I don't know if any of you remember, but there was an oil train fire in Quebec a few years back. Lockwood Conflict is the name of the town. To have something like this at our disposal could mean the difference between burning up a large swath of our city and saving it. So,
But I'm curious how it operationally works. Does a truck pull up and carry this behind them like a big trailer, and then it's like?
It's actually not a trailer, it's a very small trailer, correct?
Yeah,
If I
it's a
remember,
small
It's a
trailer.
smaller trailer that generates a significant amount of this product that can be dispensed.
And it's basically like a, I guess like a big fire extinguisher or something?
Well, it's a foam trailer and it has a large deluge gun on it. We feed it through a fire engine and it will produce thousands and thousands of gallons of foam, which will suppress the vapors and put the fire out.
Is it Alon or Petrichor can?
What's that?
Is it Alon or Petrichor can?
I don't. It's, so it is, it's from New York State. We're part of a task force. They're strategically placed all the way through roads, railroad places going up through, and we cover the northern part. We've had it for 6 years. So they maintain it, they take care of everything, do all the maintenance on it. We just have to state that we'll respond with it if needed. And we can use it for any other type of fire, fuel truck fire, anything like that, where we need the foam. They've authorized us to use it.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 7.156, vendor permits on city-owned property.
Motion by Councilor Canal, second by Councilor McFarland, discussion.
This is just so we can have vendors that. sell
Correct, that's,
other than food.
yeah, exactly, that's the one thing that we kind of missed in the whole food truck. We didn't set a priority for vendors, and we have no structure for actually having vendors operate the city. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Item 7.157, authorizing street closure, Brinkerhoff, Marion, Margaret.
Motion, Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor McFarland, discussion.
I guess this would be the third one time we're approving this. It's, I think at least the third time I've gone to two of them, and it's been pretty great. There's a lot of people there. Everyone seems to be having a good time, so I haven't heard any complaints. I don't know if you guys have, but I see no problem approving it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Item 7.158, approval of beer garden on city property for Mayor's Cup.
Motion by Councilor Canal, second by Councilor Gibbs, discussion.
Can you explain this to me?
It's a garden, plant seeds, grow stuff, drink beer.
It's not really a garden.
No.
I think we talked about this in the city operation.
No, I know that, I'm being
Yeah.
facetious, I know it's not really a garden, but I'm like, beer
Yeah.
garden, what does that look like? So it's tents.
It's required to be roped off and controlled. Yeah, that's part of it as well, but this is part of the festivity that they're gonna host at the beach. To have a beer garden, a beer. Yeah, or what, it doesn't need to be called a beer garden, Councilor Gibbs, it can be called a beer area.
No, I think it's very cool, I do. Who's gonna be providing the beer for this garden?
Mayor's Cup has organized several local breweries to manage it, so. Well, I think you have a free ticket to go.
Yes, but who's driving me home?
That's a great question. There you go. Any further
Any
discussion?
taxi will drive me home.
There you go. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Item 7.159, approval of alcohol on city property for CBP gala event.
Motion, Councilor Canal, second by Councilor Gibbs, discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Item 7.160 was withdrawn. Item 7.161, authorized NICEAG access agreement for soil and groundwater testing, investigations, assessments, and work.
Motion by Councilor Canal, second by Councilor Gibbs, discussion.
Yes, where will this be to
Where is it?
So if you look at NICEAG's MGP site across the river, there's the giant tent in the center of the property. NICEAG owns that and the immediately surrounding area, but the riverfront property around that is all owned by the city. But a work plan that's been approved by DEC that's part of their ongoing remediation work necessitates the placement of groundwater monitoring wells around the perimeter of the MGP site, all on city property. So in the past, there has been, my understanding is a handshake agreement between the city and NICEAG, which allowed NICEAG access to city property to install those wells and to take periodic measurements to comply with their DEC work plan. With the Saranac River Trail going in and the city's significant investment in those improvements, we felt that it was necessary at this point to have a formal agreement in place that would require NYSEG to repair any damage to city property that they might inflict as part of their monitoring activities. This is going to be in place for the duration of the requirements that NYSEG take those periodic samples from the groundwater. Some of the councilors may remember that for several years there were groundwater monitoring wells on the Durkee Street site, which every year we had to have them monitored, sent the test results into DEC. After 10 or 15 years, the pollution levels had reached a low enough point where all of the wells were approved for decommissioning. They were removed from the parking lot and part of the way. Eventually that will happen with the NYSEG monitoring wells around the perimeter of that site, but it will be several years, and this access agreement will cover all of that time until 6 months after DEC gives them final approval to remove the wells, to give NYSEG time to get them out of there, and then the city will have free reign of the property.
Any further discussion? Roll call.
Council Canales?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Talon?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Carried. Just before you read the next ones, items 7.162 through 7.165 are all essentially together, if you will. I'm not gonna make the motion to bundle them together. We will go item by item to review each one, but essentially they kind of all fit together.
Item 7.162, authorized budget transfer, general fund, Old Base Marina Building demolition and disposal.
Motion by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Kelly. Discussion.
What's going to be the dollar amount?
That is the dollar amount. $39,365. Yep, that is the dollar amount for the demolition of the Old Base Marina building.
And this is over at Sailor's Point, right?
Sailors Beach.
It's long overdue.
I 100% agree.
Downsizing, I think they call this.
Yeah, making some room down there.
Downside.
It's a bit nostalgic for me. I grew up swimming on that marina. You know, we use that vendor building to rent boats, and you can rent a boat and, take it around. But it's nice to see, the city doing something with that property, improving it, making it a little bit nicer to use. So, yeah, but would be the spending transfer for demoing that building. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Council Canales?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Talon?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Carried.
Item 7.163, authorized budget transfer, general fund, rec complex transfer, old bathhouse demolition.
Motion by Councilor Canales, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion.
Yes, what's the dollar amount on this one?
55.
Do you have the
I don't. Do I?
You were sent them.
No, it sent them to me, but I mean.
$55,815.
Oh, they're right here in front of me. Crazy.
Got it.
Also, this is just like the last one, it needs to be done, it would be nice if it
yeah.
had been maintained. I know, Michelle Armstrong and I, got a tour of it, 2 years ago. And we were hoping that, we could get some funding to renovate it and fix it up. But, we looked into it. and
This
it's
old
not
bathhouse?
happening, Yeah.
Well, and we did, right, and part of the goal for Joe's office to go out there was to do that, to understand what the impact of that approach was. Having conversations with Councilor Moore about, hey, there's actually some really nice beams up there in the ceiling, that would have been nice to save, and you could have put a pole barn or some type of event out there, event space out there. However, the roof itself has asbestos, the walls have asbestos. And if you go out there, the southern eastern slab is washed out underneath, and you can see the building actually separating from the rest of the building. So, unsalvageable. Yeah, and it's made pretty clear by Joe's office that although it's not suspected that it will collapse, it does have some significant safety issues with the current state.
Well, I think it's been closed for 9-10 years, and it's not surprising that it's unsalvageable. When we looked at it 2 years ago, it was in very rough shape, and, so if we can't fix it up, it's time to tear it down.
Well, yeah, I mean, the beach looks so much better now that these dilapidated buildings are either coming down or they're being fixed. The beach looks better than it has in years.
Yeah, I agree.
And
just for everybody on this council and everybody listening, the bigger picture happening at the beach was also part of the $20,000 that this council approved to create this implementation plan of the 2016 waterfront feasibility study, which will hopefully get a report back this finance committee meeting on what they found, how they price things out, how they're phasing things in, and also the opportunity that we've discussed with our grant writer to find funds to start to implement that plan. So again, this is not just tearing down a building, it's tearing down a building inside the bigger scheme of what we're doing at the beach right now. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Council Canals?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
yes.
Council Talon?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Carried.
Item 7.164, approval of third-party air monitoring agreement for demolition of Northern Beach Bathhouse and Old Base Marina Building.
Motion by Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Canals. Discussion. $6,970, Councilor Gibbs.
Well, I was looking at the packet, I did not get them. I mean, they came to my email, but just for the
Understood.
purposes of clarity, because we've media here.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're curious about.
In total, I think it hovered around $90,000 for both the demolition, and that includes hauling and disposal, air monitoring of both projects. I think it was like 83 plus this 6,000.
Yeah, it's close to 90.
89, 90,000 in total. Any further discussion for? Roll call.
Council Canals? Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Talon?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Carried.
Item 7.165, approval of demolition proposals for Northern Beach Bathhouse and Old Base Marina Building.
Motion. Councilor Canales, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion. Roll call.
Council Canals?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Talon?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Carried.
Item 7.166, approval of consulting agreement with Mullane Tamer.
Motion. Councilor McFarland, second by Councilor Gibbs. Discussion.
Easy decision as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, me too.
Until we can replace her, we need someone helping out.
Yeah. Now, will her function, except, I don't know if this was answered in the email that you expressed this to us, will her function continue on the planning board? Will her role
Somewhat maybe advisory, but
advisory?
we also know that we have a staff member in the CDO office that acts as the liaison for the planning board and the CDO office, so that person will also help facilitate some of those questions.
Will she be running the comprehensive plan committee?
Likely not. This is more of an on-demand function of some of the projects that she was working on. I don't think it's going to be a regular ongoing aspect of managing those projects, but rather being more advisory, filling in some gaps and some shortcomings more from a knowledge perspective.
It should be just 10. No benefits.
1099, no benefits, 1099 on contract, straight contractor. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Council Canals?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yes.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Talon?
Yes.
Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Carried.
Item 7.167, whereas on June 10th, 2021, Councilman McFarland introduced local law P-4 of 2021, and a public hearing on said local law was completed on July 1st, 2021 in City Hall, And whereas pursuant to seeker, the Common Council has determined the proposed action of local law P-4 of 2021 to be an unlisted action. And whereas the Common Council desires to serve as lead agency for the purpose of conducting an environmental review of the proposed action in accordance with the seeker regulations. And whereas the city intends to prepare a short environment assessment form to evaluate the potential impacts of the proposed action. And whereas pursuant to GML 239-M, the Common Council has determined that the proposed action requires a referral to the Clinton County Planning Department. Now therefore be it resolved that the Common Council authorizes the city attorney to prepare a short environmental assessment form and further to submit a GML 239-M referral packet to the Clinton County Planning Department for this proposed local law.
Motion. Councilor Gibb, second by Councilor McFarland. Discussion.
Yes, I'm gonna request that this be tabled at this time.
That'd be a motion.
You did a motion?
So this is a motion for the seeker, not for the local law.
This is just a motion to refer the matter up to the county planning department, which is required because of the potential amendment of a local law. Under the general municipal law, you refer those to the county, so that they can review it, take a comment, or act within 30 days.
And what would that process look like for the individuals that came up today?
So basically, the council could not, from a legal perspective, not recommended that they take any action on that local law until that procedural step is completed. So basically, it's a precursor to taking this, any further subsequent action. That's fine.
So it has to go to the county planning board. So the local law was never gonna get done today. I will address, a few.
Sorry, just a point of order. There's a motion on the table. There's a motion on the floor to table. Let's address that.
That's what I'm addressing.
The motion? Well, we need to take a first and a second, then a discussion, if you'd like to do
Okay,
that.
fair enough.
Motion on the table.
Let's not withdraw the motion.
Unless you want to withdraw that motion, and we can go into
A motion.
motion to table.
Correct.
Counselor Canales, second.
I'll second it.
Second by Counselor Talon. All in favor?
Well, discussion on the motion.
Discussion, you can discuss on the motion to table.
Okay, so I'll talk about, like, I don't think this local law has been pushed through at all. There were comments on that. I will say that this local law was written 2 years ago. I brought it up to, well, I didn't bring up the writing of the local law, but this was discussed in the Parking Advisory Committee, which is where it first started being discussed. The Parking Advisory Committee did not vote on it. I believe if I can quote Rodney Brown, although this isn't verbatim, he said, laws are up to the council. We're just here to find replacement parking and things of that nature, so it's not really in our purview. I then brought it to Mayor Reed. Mayor Reed asked me to wait because we had just gotten a grant for $100,000 to do a comprehensive zoning rewrite. So I waited. And then we had the meeting of the comprehensive plan, which I am on that committee as Mr. Nolan is too, where it was first discussed that this is not a zoning rewrite. We don't have enough money. $100,000 is not enough for the zoning rewrite. The comprehensive plan review is to develop a comprehensive plan and to update the 2016 LRAP study. They are going to recommend changes to the zoning law that are required to implement the comprehensive plan and to implement updating of the LRAP and mostly focusing on the waterfront with the LRAP. However, I will say that this provision of getting rid of parking minimums is part of the listed goals in the comprehensive plan review. I brought it up to Mayor Reed then. Do we still want to wait? And we talked about, I will also say this has nothing to do with crime. In fact, we specifically waited until crime was done for a number of reasons. Crime is very different. Crime is replacing a huge parking lot that we have. It's part of a state project. We wanted that to go through the system. We didn't want to interfere with that. So we specifically waited until crime was done to put forth this local law. But it has been out there. And, you know, I don't know, this wasn't because crime took so long either. The only thing I can remember of friction between the council and the zoning board was we were upset that we got a bill for tens of thousands of dollars for something that wasn't pre-approved by the council. But the local law won't affect crime. Crime is done. Crime, we wanted the back and forth and negotiations on parking because Prime was actually going to affect how our parking calculations came out for the city. So this wasn't done because of Prime. It wasn't done, and we put it off for the comprehensive plan. Now, I presented it to Mayor Rose request, I think, in January, once Prime finished with the zoning board and planning board, saying that the comprehensive plan is not really going to cover this, might not. I don't see really a point in waiting. But I talked to Mayor Rose request and we waited a little bit anyways. See how everything shakes out. Then I brought it up again, I believe at the beginning of June, when Melena Tamer quit. And that was the real big impetus of what caused me to put forward. The mayor said he wanted to talk to some people, so I held off until June 10th. Now this local law has been presented on June 10th. It's been 21 days, which is longer than any local law has been out there for public consumption since my time on the council. So if you want to table it, I don't have a problem with it. This is my last day. The city council is going to have to vote on this no matter what. It won't be voted on today. It's going to the county planning board. I did get the letter from the planning board this morning, and asking for time to review and submit something. I think they'll have that either way because it's going to be about 30 days from the county planning board. But like I said, I don't care if this gets tabled. It's something I'm here to talk about. I've done extensive research. I've sent you guys some of it. The council that's longer knows I was sending more research about this local law and the effects of it 2 years ago. So it's had a lot of time to sit there. I've been open for discussions about it. People have come to the Parking Advisory Committee, although this wasn't really the main focus of the Parking Advisory Committee, which is why they didn't make a recommendation to the council. But I don't think it's been pushed. It won't finish today, no matter what you do. You'll have another crack to look at it, get more public input. We knew it was going to the county planning board when it was first proposed, even a long time before it was first proposed. So, like I said, I don't think it's been pushed at all. In fact, I've delayed it years. The reason that I pushed it was like Mr. Merkel brought up, the special assessment district should be gone. It really should. And we need to develop plans for replacing that. Now, the one thing that has made Plattsburgh so successful is that the planning board and zoning board, bless their heart, has not been enforcing this local law in our downtown. If it had, you would notice it because you'd see building, parking lot, building, parking lot, building, parking lot. Me and Mr. Merkel talked about this at the Parking Advisory Committee. You know, it would be a travesty if you wanted to update one of your buildings and you were told that you need to come up with 10 parking spots. How are you going to do that? You have to buy the lot, the building next to you, and tear it down and build a parking lot. So I do get worried. The planning board, by the way, has been, from my experience of people telling me, and granted, I don't know, I can tell you there was a member on the Parking Advisory Committee who brought up, I think it was the, you mentioned the Bow project was, which was going to, some project that was going to be down on the chiropractor's lot on the other side of Cornelia, didn't happen because it was one parking spot short, but I don't know if that's true.
Totally wrong.
I don't know if
I'm
that's
not
true.
saying no.
But that's what was told to me.
Please don't do that.
But the only time, I did mention to Mackenzie when she called me the other day, that the only thing I know where parking minimums were even discussed was the Prime project. So I honestly thought this had probably been researched pretty heavily by the zoning board and the planning board. I have much more to say about this local law, but I'll leave it at that because this is just a motion to table.
Well, I believe that suffices. What you've said is more than enough and extensive, and knowing that it's gonna be another 30 days before this actually being brought forth to local law, I'd suffice to withdraw my table.
Okay. Oh, so now we can talk about the local law. Yes. Like I said, it's entirely up to you guys.
Motion? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know if we took a motion in a second.
We would have had to table it, wouldn't we?
No.
I made the motion table or explaining it.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll make a motion.
Motion, Councilor McFarland, second. Councilor Canales, discussion.
So about the local law in general. Basically, my thoughts on this, and as I told Mr. Lyle on the paper, I first came across these things. I'd never even heard of parking minimums when the mayor and the council appointed me in parking advisory committee. I started doing research. I do think the first time I heard of parking minimums was the Strong Towns article. And Strong Towns obviously has hundreds of articles talking about getting rid of parking minimums. But a lot of things. You read Jeff Spett's book, Walkable City. The first thing he talks about in parking is getting rid of parking minimums. And honestly, every article, every research I've done advises cities to get rid of parking minimums. Cities have done it different ways. Some do it just in a special assessment district. Some do it only near mass transit, as Mr. Domingue pointed out, might be worthwhile. I spent time about a year and a half ago trying to find arguments against it. I haven't really found any academic arguments against it, but maybe people can come up with some. And there are, but the main point is that when you want to build, that you are not beholden to a formula that was developed, God knows when, how. Ask anybody how these formulas were discussed. I don't know what went into them, but not all uses are alike. The other thing that comes up is you can't change uses. You can't. If you have a building downtown, you want to develop a different use for it, and it has a more stringent parking requirement, you're prevented from doing that unless you go to the zoning board and the planning board to give a variance. And the zoning board and the planning board have been very generous from what I understand, and as Mr. Nolan pointed out, with granting these variances, and thank God, because Plattsburgh our downtown is not thriving, but it's doing better than a lot of downtowns where there are more divided by parking lots in between every building. I know one of the things I sent you was about a city in Idaho. That city has 8,000 people. It is less than half the size of Plattsburgh. And they got rid of their parking minimums because when a bank went into town, they needed more parking minimums. They got rid of the pizza place. They bought the pizza place and tore it down to build more parking. And the reason I was interested in pushing this forward is because I was afraid with the Durkee Street parking lot going that might start happening. Who knows? Like I said to Mr. Lau in the paper, I don't think it'll be an imminent change to the city. The people still need parking. I don't envision people building buildings, residential apartment complexes without parking. Every time you talk about parking, people talk about how we need parking. I have disagreements with people on that. I do think the city of Plattsburgh has way too much parking. I walk around a lot counting empty parking spots. Ethan Vincent went around a lot physically counting spots and keeping data. And we show that we have a lot of excess parking in the city. But this local law is just the start of that conversation. And I wanted to get the conversation started. At the time when I was proposed, I wasn't planning on this being my last day. But I can tell you that parking is important. There's a lot of data out there on it. I do hope the council looks at it, focuses on it. This is my parking binder that I'm giving Councilor Gibbs afterwards, and it's.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's not even, I haven't even looked at it in a year and a half since COVID hit and the parking committee stopped meeting. But there's a lot of important aspects to it, and I think this is the start because I can't see getting rid of the special assessment district with the benefits it has brought of saving our downtown until we can do something like this. There's other ways to deal with parking, and what I think is exactly like Mr. Speck pointed out in that I say he has the chapter on that, where he says parking should be treated like a utility, the city should provide it. It shouldn't be left up to each individual landowner to provide off-street parking for their customers or for their residents. A good reason for that is residential parking and commercial parking are pretty good complements of each other. Commercial parking tends to have their busiest times between 9 to 5 during working hours. Residential parking is the exact opposite. People need a place to park when they're going to sleep and late at night when they're coming home from work. So it doesn't make sense to have a commercial building next to a residential building and a parking minimum requiring both of them to have, let's say, just for math, so the parking minimums require each of these buildings, these hypothetical buildings, to have 100 parking spots. Why couldn't they both team up and contract together to come up with 120 parking spots? It's something that I think the market can seriously provide, because no one wants to build a business, no one wants to build an apartment complex and not provide parking for their residents, for their customers, and if they can afford to do it, then great. The other big reason to really look into this is because it prices out local developers. Mr. Nolan talked about how crime was in the zoning board for a while. I didn't have a problem with that necessarily, but I will say this: every time you make someone come to the zoning board, planning board, and pay attorneys, pay architects, pay engineers to come, you're paying them hundreds of dollars an hour. It runs up the price. I don't know how much it costs, but can you imagine one of our local developers trying to go through that process and paying, I don't know, $500,000 to try to make sure that they can go through that process? But even on a smaller scale, it hurts. Small local developers, if they think they can come up with a way, maybe they have a business plan that, as Mr. Nolan pointed out, that you don't need parking. But now you need to, or maybe you have an agreement with a church next door that only has parking problems on Sunday, and you're only open Monday through Friday. That's something you have to prepare for, and then get approved and get a variance, and that stuff costs money. And as you raise the price of development, all you're doing is making the apartments in our downtown and our city more expensive, because that's going to be passed on to the consumer. So it's definitely something to be thinking about, and it's definitely something to be concerned about. So please do the research, and like I said, if you guys want to table it, you want to vote it down, fine too. Just please consider it for the future, because everything I've read on parking, I've spent hours looking into it. Every expert seems to agree that it's a good move. We still have enough parking in our downtown. We want our downtown especially, but this also applies to the non-downtown areas. We do need parking. We do need off-street parking, but to apply a one-size-fits-all and do surgery with a sledgehammer, so to speak, based on uses, based on this amount of parking is required for this amount of square feet in a building, it just doesn't match the reality of today, and it's been hurting American cities. There's a lot of data on it, and cities are building parking, and it spreads out the uses, so there's more cars. Mr. Domingue is right. One of the absolute reasons to focus on that is less reliance on cars, and we don't have a mass transit system. And one of the reasons we don't have a mass transit system is because we've been subsidizing cars tremendously. And if you want affordable housing in Plattsburgh, you have to stop making the price of development higher. You have to stop subsidizing cars, especially if you want affordable housing for people that can't afford cars. There's a lot of people that can't afford cars. I represent a lot of children whose parents ride the car bus. I've never ridden it myself, but it's a serious issue. And studies show that parking minimums in a lot of places end up costing, if you value it out to the public, people that can't own cars, $13,000 roughly. That's a lot of money. A parking spot costs $10,000 roughly. And if you start doing parking garages, if you start doing underground parking, that price jumps up to $35,000 easy. And if you need to go multiple levels underground, it's going way more than that. So I could talk more. If you guys have questions, I'd be happy to. I think it makes so much sense. And it's something I honestly believe in. I honestly think it's for the best of Plattsburgh. And I'm still going to have a lot of interest in Plattsburgh. I'm from here. My parents still live up here. All my friends live up here. I don't know.
We're up here.
You guys are up here, and I'm happy to come talk to you again about this issue. But so I am interested in the future of Plattsburgh, and I hope it is successful. Plattsburgh's got a lot of great things going for it, and I hope that we keep focusing. I keep focusing on the lake. Keep focusing on getting housing downtown. The last focus has to be, we have a real shortage of housing downtown. Mayor Rosenquist talked about this a lot during his campaign. The last time I looked by the official numbers, our vacancy rate in the city of Plattsburgh was 2.1%. When I remember in 2016, when I moved to the city, finding an apartment was horrible. I hear horror stories from clients, from people that they can't find apartments in the city. So this is all entwined together. It is all about a vision for the city. This is merely just the first step. Parking is an issue, but even parking, if you discuss more than just this local law, it is gonna factor into a lot of development for the city. And it is absolutely important that this council continues to talk about it, continues to discuss it. And that's all I have to say, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question, Patrick.
Yes.
As our parking guru, which you filled that role for many years now, how does this relate to our effort, which will soon be started, I assume, to charge for parking downtown? Is that related in any way at all with this local law? Will there be any side effects of the local law on the effort to charge for parking? Do you see anything?
I don't think that directly affected, Mike, but there's no way you can talk about parking and segment one off and say it doesn't matter. Because charging for parking, especially on-street parking, is gonna deal with demand for where people wanna go to a building. So, for example, if you are gonna go to Iris's, where do you wanna park? You wanna park right in front of Iris's. You don't wanna park over near the Gateway Building in the Durkee Street lot. So, not really. I think developing a plan for how everything interacts is certainly necessary. I will point out that the first of the 14 points of the parking study that Carl Walker did was you can either build enough parking to have no management and have enough parking for whenever you need it, and most of it will sit vacant half the time, but it's there for whenever you need it, or to have less parking and do a managed system. And he suggests a managed system. And the off-street parking requirements came about because people and cities chose the first option, to build enough parking or whatever. Each individual business has to have enough parking to satisfy their customers. Each individual apartment complex has to have enough parking to satisfy its residents. And that's not good parking policy. It is just not. It destroys cities. And it has not destroyed Plattsburgh, so I hope we can work together and make sure that it doesn't destroy Plattsburgh. A much better way is to have the city provide parking and have a comprehensive parking plan. So for charging on-street parking right now, the recommendation from the Parking Advisory Committee is that we don't charge for parking on the street because honestly, we don't have enough demand for it. And hopefully we can. One of the best quotes I heard about parking was, the only thing worse than having a parking problem is never having a parking problem. So on-street parking can play into that, but this local law really doesn't affect that, I don't think, not in the near term.
And I think, from what I've spoken to community members, I don't know if it's necessarily in opposition to the abolishing or changing parking calculations or even removing parking minimums. I think it's more of a concern about how does this fit into the bigger picture of that comprehensive master plan for development, for waterfront improvement, for accessibility, not only just for development per se in their downtown, but the concern that it does have in the residential areas. I don't necessarily, again, I don't oppose eliminating parking minimums or at least certainly recalculating parking requirements. It's my concern is mostly about, it seems like this is kind of being packaged as a one-off rather than how does it fit into the comprehensive master plan that's being developed that does also address parking concerns and parking minimums along with the other number of zoning updates that we really, really need. And we've talked about zoning updates for years now.
Years,
right?
and that's part of the.
And we need them, and parking is part of that. So, look, I'm just expressing what I've heard. I share that concern because I know that the comprehensive plan does include zoning and planning changes that are consistent with what the plan is recommending. That would be my recommendation at the end. And, you know, I'm saying something to Patrick McFarland that I've said to him in private already. So, but, you know, we've had this conversation many times. But that would be my recommendation, is that it does get packaged into a broader context of the work that is already being done for the comp plan.
And in my response to that is the same response I took. First of all, I have very little faith that the comp plan gets done quickly, just because nothing gets done quickly. It's been going on for 2 years. And it's also where things get horse traded away. But it's, like I said, the reason I put this forth is because Malane left the city. I know we're bringing her back now, but we were just told she's not gonna be running the comp plan. How long is it gonna take? We've been talking about zoning updates for years. And I haven't seen anything written up. So I wrote this up as a starting point. I think the comprehensive plan layers very well on top of it, because the one thing this does is, well, it doesn't put the city in complete control. In fact, a lot of cities do parking maximums. That's more for bigger cities. Places like Plattsburgh don't do parking maximums. The other things you can do is in lieu payments and start getting money. But the one thing this does is it stops putting all the impetus of parking on developers and on business owners, on apartment owners, on property owners, and it starts putting it on the city so the city can focus on it and develop the plan forward. It doesn't stop people from building parking. Studies have shown that even when you get rid of parking minimums, some buildings get made with the same amount of parking. Some get made with less. Some get made with more than they would have been required to build. Most developers, their banks and their financing requires parking too. So it doesn't necessarily mean that developers won't have any requirements on them for no parking. And it certainly doesn't mean that no one will build parking, because parking is necessary. In the North Country, parking is necessary. I've met quite a few people in the North Country that don't have cars. I've met quite a few people that don't have cars for personal reasons because they don't like driving. And I always think, what are you doing living in the North Country? Because living without a car it's pretty drastic up here, but people do it, especially if they're going to be living in downtown and going to be walking to most things. A lot of families will go to a one-car household, and that's great. But I hope this is the start of the process for the comprehensive plan to build on top of, so we can start focusing on mass transit. I would love it if there was a better bus system up here, and start focusing on the other things we need. So I think if this passes, it goes very well, because it's sound in my mind. Obviously, people disagree, and it worries me for the comprehensive plan that members of the planning board and zoning board don't agree, because I actually thought they would be in favor of this.
We'll call a question. I think you.
Yeah, that's fair.
All right, roll call.
Counselor Canales?
Yes.
Counselor Kelly?
Yes.
Counselor Gibbs?
Yes.
Counselor Talon?
Yes.
Counselor McFarland?
I'll abstain.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
One abstention, carried.
And for the record, I'm abstaining because this is my last day. Obviously, I'm in favor of it, but you guys are the ones going forward with this. So good luck.
Item 7.168, determination and notice of finding based on environmental review findings of no significant impact, FONSI.
Motion. Counselor Canales, second. Counselor Kelly, discussion.
This came to us kind of quickly.
Yes, I apologize for that. It was specifically a function of the grant funding for the Vilas home and the timing for them to have that process approved, which coincided with their development schedule.
I think it's easy to understand their urgency.
Yeah, I probably to Matt Miller's heartburn, said, no, I'm not putting this on tonight's agenda, because we get a lot of these, and I personally like to give some time for review, but given the urgency, I did want to get this onto the agenda, out to everybody earlier today, and then onto the agenda for this evening. Any further discussion? Yeah,
So could Director Miller tell us a bit about it?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So you're all familiar with Vilas Home. I won't recount the facts of the project. There's a $750,000 CDBG grant award that forms part of the financing for the construction of the expansion of the property. That comes with requirements that are attached to the fact that most of the money comes from the federal government. So when we're talking about NEPA, that is the National Environmental Protection Act. That is the federal version of SEEKR. So while the Violet Home is going through the process with the planning board, got all its necessary approvals here at home, a process similar to what the city went through for the downtown DRI projects, an environmental impact statement was prepared for the Violet Home last summer. It was completed in August, Elise? Then the grant application was put in. This is basically certifying the findings of that roughly 1,000-page document that was completed last year for the federal environmental review process. It starts a 35-day statutory process for public comment on those findings, at which point, once it's completed, the issuance of a notice to proceed from Housing and Community, the Office of Homes and Community Renewal at the state level is issued to the owner of the Violet Home, Eli Schwartzberg, so he can commence with construction, close on his construction loan, and start groundbreaking and get the expansion of the ground this year. And he stated that even the delay of a couple of weeks would have meant the difference between breaking ground this year and having to forego any significant construction activities until next year.
So that's a pretty good reason to decide it today.
Why ask? Any further discussion? Roll call.
Council Canales?
Yes.
Council Kelly?
Yeah.
Council Gibbs?
Yes.
Council Talon? Yes. Council McFarland?
Yes.
Council Moore?
Yes.
Carried. Is there no need for executive session? Any new business to come before this council?
I had one comment. I just wanted to wish Councilor McFarland success in his new job, his relocation, and I know I've gotten to know you a little bit. I really appreciate it. I know how much time you've put into this. It's a lot of extra work, a lot of time that you have to give up to your family or whatever. And I believe I speak on behalf of everybody. We really appreciate the time you spent on the job and the work that you've done on the council.
Agreed. I'm gonna miss you so much, Patrick. You know, I said this to a number of people. You're always the first person I call. There's something I want to flesh out, discuss, strategize, and I'm really gonna miss your presence here. You take a ton of institutional knowledge with you. I mean, tonight is the demonstration of everything you've amassed in knowledge for parking and basic, urban planning. But I'm very thrilled for you and your family, and I really wish you the best. We're gonna miss you.
Well, thank you.
And I'd like to say that I'm really going to miss you too, because you're not just another member of council to me, you're my friend, and you sit next to me, and I'm going to miss you, I'm going to miss Renee and Aurelia, and I'm especially going to miss seeing Omar and the instant joy I get every time I see him everywhere. We all know he's Plattsburgh's favorite dog, Omar.
No, Tim do might have something to say about that.
I'm gonna keep your phone number in my list of contacts and hope you don't change it when you get there. Your phone.
You might have to tonight.
It's always been a pleasure to chat with you just about anything, Patrick. Particularly about things like parking issues. And you always brought your legal perspective to us free of charge. And I think that was a great benefit also when they sat tremendously. So thank you for being with us as long as you could.
Well, thank you, everybody. Real quick before I address that, I did want to actually give a thank you to the captain because my mother informed me about a very specific incident she had with a police officer, whereas she was at with my daughter, going to a friend's house at Edgewater Estates to use the pool. And I don't know what time it was, but it was a very busy time apparently for Route 9 in the northern part of the city, and she could not cross. And a police officer stopped, asked her if she needed to cross the street, and he stopped traffic so she could cross the street, and I think that is excellent. So I don't know who the specific officer was, but I wanted to express my thanks to the police department for that. But then I will also address, I'm very sorry for leaving. I have had some good times, I've had bad times on this council too, we don't know that. But I have loved, working with the members of this council always. From the beginning, when Josh Kretzer was on it, he used to sit right next to me. We used to have a lot of fun. Peter Etzel was on the other side of me, that was great. Mike's always been there, but, Rochelle, I don't want to start naming everyone because when I forget someone, I'll feel bad, but everyone on this council has been great. I've had great relationships with everyone on this council. Mayor Reed, Mayor Rosenquist, Dean has been fantastic. So I'm sad to be leaving, but I am very happy to, know that the city is in good hands, and is looking out for everyone's best interests. And God knows we've disagreed on things. I think I tend to get made fun of by some people for voting no a lot. But, I never take it personally when someone's disagreed with me. I've never been given too much guff when someone disagrees with me. So I am going to miss it here. I love Plattsburgh. It's a fantastic place, and I will definitely be coming back and visiting. And I hope great things for the city and everyone on this council and everyone in the city, and especially city staff as well. City staff has been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for serving. And anybody who serves in public office knows that it's challenging sometimes. You gotta be vulnerable, you gotta have a thick skin. You're putting your ideas out in public. Yeah. So, it's always to acknowledge somebody and for doing that work. So thank you for serving your community. Any new business to come before this council? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Councilor Gibbs, second by Councilor Canales. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We now adjourn.